The college football experience, Georgia Bulldogs 2024 season preview episode on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. You can win up to 100 times the amount of money you enter with Underdog Fantasy Pick'em. Sign up today with the promo code TCESGPN to claim your special pick plus first time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. And yes, they do have college football action. UnderdogFantasy.com promo code TCESGPN. And remember, as always, folks, too, let it ride.
Hey, what's up, you degenerate gamblers? This is Bill Burr, and you're listening to SGPN. Let it ride, baby.
Football experience, Georgia Bulldogs 2024 season preview. I mean, I know a year ago, Georgia, it's tough to say they had a down year.
They did not have a down year.
But some would say they feel like had there been the 12-team playoff this past year, that they would have won the thing, would have got a rematch potentially.
I think a lot would say, and including myself, I think would say,
But I will say this: Bama did play the better game against them in the SEC, so they could have lost to Bama.
Did they? Did they?
I mean, there was a questionable call. There was a questionable call,
a gigantically questionable call.
Yes,
that
but I did
might
think
have
Bama
cost Georgia the game.
Fair. But look, that game was being played in Atlanta. And I thought Alabama played just a little bit better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
would you agree to that?
Certainly, I'll say at least this much: that Bama played about as well, at least as well. Georgia may have taken the advantage in this series and have become the national powerhouse, but they are not very far from Alabama. Alabama's still right there. And
I thought Bama won on the line of scrimmage in that game, and I think that was the one deciding factor to me. But folks, we're getting ahead of it right now. If you're wondering who the hell you're listening to, well, my name is Colby Swinging Database Dad, aka Pick Dundee. That's not a pick. This is a pick.
He was raised in the land down under, where a man thinks on his feet, speaks with his fists, and lives by his wits.
When Dundee happened, he was a superstar.
And you're nothing but a chameleon, lemon-headed, coward, terrorist pussy. And I'm after you, buddy. You're going to pay for it. Good night.
Yes, we're still doing these previews.
Oh, yeah.
Got a newborn, so we're not in the studio as much. So working from home, but the previews are still happening. YouTube.com/the college experience. Hey, get on over there. You can watch the show. We got graphics and everything. Hit that like and then subscribe wherever podcasts are at. You can catch us. Go over to iTunes. Give us a 5. We're going to talk about the Georgia offense, the Georgia defense, what they did in the portal, and what should we expect in 2024 in the brand new SEC with the brand new 12-team playoff. Can't wait for all of it. I am joined by my co-host. You see the JMU flag in the background. Give it up for former
better
JMU.
Bulldogs.
Yes. Oh, wow.
Just
they
throwing
haven't
it out
played,
there.
so you got that. You got that out there. Give it up for former JMU Duke defensive back, the burrito eating, sideline kiss stealing, wheeling and dealing, Patty C in the place to be.
Hi-oh. Well,
let's get it going. It's preview time. Go check out our Alabama preview. We got the Auburn preview. We are going conference by conference this year. Years past 7 years, we've been doing, different style of previews, going A to Z. Wisconsin fans would be screwed. Vanderbilt fans would be screwed. And now No, we're switching it up. We're going conference by conference this year.
The SEC, their props. They are our first conference that we are covering, and as well they should be. Has there been a more dominant conference in college football over the past 2.5 decades?
No.
Most certainly there has not been. Yeah.
And now enters the 12-team playoff, and Oklahoma and Texas. So the rich get richer. Some would say, let's get into it though, buddy. Because Kirby Smart, it was. Check out the graphics. It was. We can full out say this. It was a smart hire by the Georgia Bulldogs after Mark Richt.
Undoubtedly.
Look at that record against the SEC teams this year, like all 16 SEC teams, and Georgia Tech, your rivals. Since he entered,
has Smart been there 8 years?
Yes, and he's 8-0. He's 8-0 against Missouri, 8-0 against Kentucky, 7-1 against the Deep South's oldest rivalry against the Auburn Tigers, 7-1 against Tennessee, 7-1 against South Carolina, 6-1 against Vandy. They didn't play the COVID year, right? 6-1 against Georgia Tech. Paul Johnson did get him in year one. 6-2 against Florida in the world's biggest cocktail party. 3-0 against Hail State, 2-0 against Arkansas, 1-0 against A&M, 1-0 against Oklahoma. They played in the 4-team invitational at the Rose Bowl in overtime, a classic game. They are 0-1 against Texas. They're 1-1 against Ole Miss. They're the only losing records here. LSU they're 1-2 against, and Alabama Nick Saban 1-5 against.
Although wait, oh yeah, they did. They only beat Alabama in the national championship. Every other game they've lost.
You know what Bama fans say? Had they not gotten injured at wideout, they had that game. That's true.
They beat them a month before pretty badly.
Yes, and they had multiple injuries to wideouts. But and Ohio State fans try to milk that shit with the Marvin Harrison thing too. But now I will say this:
have a case. Ohio State probably
was beating them bad. Yeah. But I will say this: obviously, it's been a smart hire. Kirby Smart has kicked ass.
Fucking amazing hire.
A plus hire. Yeah. Won the national championship just 2 years ago. And
when you think about Kirby Smart, or rather Mark Richt, I mean, he had some pretty darn good years. Like, let's be honest. Like, when you go back to like Jim Donnan, Ray Goff, those dudes weren't killing it. Vince Dooley obviously had a great run, but like the whole 90s was a bit of a shit show. Mark Richt did all right, but Kirby Smart has taken it to an entirely different level. Probably the best they've ever been, right?
Yeah, and shout out to Ryan Hasty in the chat, says Kirby Smart's not fucking around. But let me play devil's advocate here. Like, first off, there's no way anyone can say it's a bad hire. It's been an amazing hire. It's been an amazing run. And now with no Saban there, you got to think this is all Kirby's moving forward. However, let me just play devil's advocate here. There's no more SEC East against the SEC West, which they get Auburn every year. So Kirby Smart, his entire record as head coach of of Georgia, is 94-16, but he is just 17-10 against SEC West schools and Oklahoma and Texas. So 10 of those losses.
I would be.
What happened to the camera? I don't know, but 10 of those losses, we lost Patty C. 10 of those losses are to SEC West teams. They're 1-0 against Oklahoma. So I guess 9 of those against SEC West teams and the Texas Longhorns, which would be the 10th loss. That is the question I think you got to ask yourself moving forward is, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I think Georgia and Kirby Smart will be fine, but I'm saying, with the schedule maybe being harder, talking about going to a 9-game conference schedule. It's still at an 8-game conference schedule. But if they go to a 9-game conference schedule, you're going to see more of those teams. And in general, even in the 8-game, you're not getting Kentucky as much. You're not getting South Carolina as much. You're not getting Vanderbilt as much. So those are things that to me, are things just to ask yourself. So anyway, Patty C, I don't know what happened to him, but anyway, we will go through. I don't know what's going on with Patty C's technology here. Anyway, I feel like it's like I feel like it's a good question to ask. And if you're looking for content regarding, Georgia and to me, if you're trying to say, hey, maybe they won't be the top team in the SEC, which I still kind of think they will be. But if we're searching for a headline, I do think, 10 of those losses have happened, and he has a losing record against LSU and Alabama. Just LSU and Alabama, he's 2-7. So, maybe this is all I'm saying. So, but I would ask him. I think we got Patty C back here, but what I don't know if you heard. Could you hear what I was saying before?
I did not. I had to get off and get back on. You touch one thing on this computer and the whole thing falls apart. Anyway, what were you saying?
Well, I was saying, playing devil's advocate here, we know Kirby Smart's been amazing, but you no longer are going to play SEC East teams every year. It's still an 8-game conference schedule. There's talk about it going to 9. Now,
it's a great point.
He's just 17-10 against the SEC West and Texas. I'm sorry, add Texas and Oklahoma 17-10. If you take out Texas and Oklahoma, he's 16-9 against the SEC West teams. My point is the guy's only lost, within the overall all of his games 16 times. So to me, that's a great question to ask. Is do you think
what has been the divide between SEC East and SEC West? I'm guessing you don't have the SEC East numbers pulled up, but I imagine the win percentage is way higher against the SEC East if they're playing two games against the SEC West every year, and it's 16 or 17-10. Then over 8 years they would be playing 6 games, like almost 50 games against the SEC East. It sounds like you said they have about like 5 or 6 losses during that time frame. It means
I don't have that information.
7-1 every year against the SEC East. That sounds about right, and more recently it's probably 8-0 or 6-0 rather. So I think they are the dominant force, especially with Florida down. Who else is even in the SEC? Tennessee has come up. South Carolina is figuring it out still.
Tennessee's come up, but surprisingly, their only win against Kirby Smart was in his first year, I believe. So, that might have been the Butch Jones era or something. But to me, I think the bigger thing is that, they do have they're just 2-7 against LSU and Alabama. And those games will happen more frequently now. And then they're 0-1 against Texas, and that game will happen. And even 1-1 against Ole Miss is something. They play Ole Miss this year. They get that's my point. Is they get, if you add in, I know Texas wasn't an SEC West team, but if you add that to the mix, because they are 0-1 against Texas, they're playing what? I'm counting, I think 5 SEC West or Texas games, this year, or new edition SEC games.
My perception is or my memory is failing me here, but there was a time I feel like when the SEC East was maybe the more powerful of the two divisions, although it seems like it's been a long time.
I think early 2000s, you probably had that, when Florida was rolling.
And Georgia was pretty good under.
Spurrier was getting South Carolina kind of going. But I don't know. You always had Vandy. You always had Kentucky in that side. Yeah. But
the SEC West wasn't nearly what they were, back then.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, just a question to ask yourself about the Kirby Smart era as we enter, this brand new era, day and age of college football. Look, we're going to go through the offense, the defense, special teams, and talk about the schedule, go game by game on the schedule, project the over, project the under, project if the Bulldogs will be in the 12-team playoff. Will they be in the SEC championship? Will they be in the national championship? We're going to talk it all. But before we do that, I want to tell you that the College Football Experience Georgia Bulldogs preview is brought to you by the College Baseball Experience. Yes. We are all part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network and the College Baseball Experience. I just watched Georgia and Army. That game was awesome the other day. The college baseball tournament has started. It's underway. I got the Louisiana's beating Texas 9-2 right now. Trying to kick them out of this thing. Can't wait. Let's go Cajuns. But yeah, college baseball is awesome. This is the best time of year for college baseball. I've been watching games all weekend. Noah Beanick, our host of the College Baseball Experience, has got you covered with the College Baseball Experience. Check it out. All right. So get on over there, hit that subscribe button, or check it out. You can watch that on YouTube too. Same channel as ours, youtube.com/the college experience. All right. We are back, and let's talk about the offense, Patty C.
Real quick, can we touch on a little more of the history
Sure.
here of what Kirby Smart has done? He is 7-1 in bowl games with in his 8 years, he has top 8 finishes in the AP, or no, top 7 finishes, 7 consecutive years. Pretty damn impressive. But the dude does an amazing job of preparing for bowl games. I don't know, like, if there's something
also
he's
the
doing.
culture, getting a lot of his guys to play in the bowl games. Watch that Florida State game. You know, I know that Georgia had a couple guys out, but I think some opted to play in, and Florida State, the entire team opted out. No, I still think
that's
Georgia
kind of the
amazing
thing about what he's doing there is like he's got like an old school, like, hey, you guys are committing to play for this team and we're not fucking around, and you guys need to like show out all the way to the end of your time here, and everyone buys in, but they're still able to get super high-end players, which, you know, typically include prima donnas that wouldn't be down to buy in like that. It's like he has a super culture going there that is, you know, leading to absolute domination across the board.
I wonder if maybe the NIL collective has something to do with it, but you know,
I'm sure that helps.
I know it has one of the, but they have one of the better, but yeah, I mean, whatever you want to say, he's been doing an amazing job, and you know, it's been remarkable. You know, we hadn't seen Georgia get to this level. I used to make fun of the fact that Georgia Tech had a more recent national championship prior to Kirby Smart. Yeah. You know, and that was a hilarious nugget that you could say, you know, when you're having a few beers at a bar down there in Atlanta or something, or in Athens. Say, well, you know, the Yellow Jackets won one more recently, but it's
piss
been
off
all
the
Georgia.
good folks of Athens.
Yeah.
Well, no longer the case.
Fun shit talk, you know what I mean? But let's talk about this offense, because Todd Monken left for the, you know, last year he was with the Baltimore Ravens after winning a couple natties. Now, you know, and legendary former quarterback with the Georgia Bulldogs, Mike Bobo, stepped in, and man, you know, it's nice to step in after Mike Bobo had been with what, I believe he had been with, was it Auburn and Colorado State? Yeah. Nice to come into a really talented situation. They were 5th in the nation in scoring points per game, 40.1 points per game. That's second best in the SEC. 5th in yards per game, 496.5 yards per game. 2nd in the SEC. 11th in passing. It's kind of the shocking numbers to me. I feel like they've started to pass the ball more. 305.3 yards per game, 2nd in the SEC, and then 21st in rushing, 191.2 yards per game, which is 3rd best in the SEC. They're a better passing team than they are a rushing team these days, Patty. See, does that shock you?
Well, if you're talking about total yardage output, I feel like that is, you know, common. I don't know that means they're more committed to the run or the pass, but the pass generally provides more yardage and points than the run. That's an eventuality of any, and I think that's actually probably the approach that Kirby Smart took. Is similar to Nick Saban. Is like you start by pounding the rock and playing good defense, and then inevitably you go, okay, we would be a little bit better if we could throw the ball a little bit better. But if you look at Stetson Bennett and Carson Beck over the past 3 years, every year they have similar stats, high 20s in terms of passing touchdowns, about 4,000 passing yards, and then slightly less than 10 interceptions. A great ratio, 3-to-1 touchdown interception. But I still think they are, you know, very much dependent on running the ball, although they don't have the workhorses that they used to have. So maybe they are getting a little bit away from that run-based system, and I think that's generally a bit of a scary thing. You know, if you're, I think that's what that hurt Alabama. You know, at the beginning they were like, you know, we're going to run the ball, and the pass is always going to be the second option. They got a little bit dependent on the pass, and then it caught up to them. Yeah, at times it worked out for them. At times they were fucking throwing the ball all over the field. But generally speaking, I think from a consistency standpoint, you'd rather be reliant on the run. Yeah, and it'll be interesting. They did lose their top, you know, 2 rushers, Kendall Milton and Edwards. You know, those guys are gone. They lost a lot. I mean, McConkey's gone. Brock Bowers. What's it? The other wideout. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but they lost another wideout. Who was it?
They bringing back majority of their wideouts. They had another guy that contributed that I thought left for the NFL. But
no, they only had one. Those two, Bowers and McConkey, drafted. As far as whether
I thought he had two names. I'm just drawing a blank on it right now. It's like you know how like Jackson Smith and Jigba. Anyway. They went out in the portal and
let's see who their top receivers from a yardage standpoint were.
They're all back for the most part. They're all back for the most part.
Lovett. I don't know if
Lovett's back. Tomás, the Mississippi State transfer's back.
What about Rosemy Jack Saint? What a name.
That's it. He's gone. Okay.
Yeah. Lad McConkey's gone. So 3 of their top 4 receivers are gone. Dominic Lovett is back with his 600 plus yards and 4 touchdowns. So at least they have something. A number 1 target.
Well, and look what they did in the portal. And see, this is something to talk about. They play Clemson in the opening game. And I think a lot of people, myself included, have ridiculed Dabo Swinney for not using the portal. You look at what Georgia they don't go out and get like 20 guys, but they go out and get difference makers. Jaden Rashada, who's currently suing the University of Florida, big time recruit, was at Arizona State last year. A guy that played decent when he played as a true freshman. We'll see how he does. I don't even think we'll see them on the field this year, but maybe if you're up a lot against, some of the opponents. But Trevor Etienne
is on a very short list of in fact, he is the Heisman favorite right now.
Yeah. Trevor Etienne wasn't first off, if you're leaving Florida to go to Georgia, look, I'm not a Florida Gator fan by any means, but if you're leaving Florida to go to Georgia, fuck, is anything sacred anymore? You fucking losers.
Yeah, I have to say, no matter what, even if the Florida coach did something wrong to your family, you don't go to Georgia. Have a little.
It's like you don't go to Florida State. You don't go to Georgia.
Few scruples.
You can go to UCF. You can go to Auburn. You can go to Mississippi State. You can go to Kentucky. Even. Come on. But that's a substantial get. He's their projected starting running back. And that's a huge get. Also, wide receivers,
he's solid. He's a good back.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They won the portal, I would say, certainly. London Humphreys comes in from Vanderbilt. I thought he flashed there in Nashville at the construction
4-star
zone
in the transfer portal.
He's good, man.
24/7.
Colby Young from Miami, obviously great name, but he's
also a 4-star according to 24/7 transfer.
I mean, dude, he's a stud. And then they got Michael Jackson, the third from USC coming in. Now, I don't know how that one will shake out necessarily, but USC always loaded with wideouts. And then the big one here, tight end Benjamin Urasek from Stanford. This dude was a stud at Stanford. Look, Brock Bowers was from the Bay Area. They continue to go up to the Bay Area to get their tight ends.
You're not replacing Brock Bowers, unfortunately. But I feel like George is in a position where they kind of take what they want and, they only take what's going to improve their roster. They have a great roster as is. Even if they took the Clemson approach and kind of didn't do anything, they would still be a playoff team. But if you take some, if you improve your roster through the portal, and when you're that good, then you're going to have an elite roster. And Georgia Georgia right now, you would say, is the odds-on favorite to win the national championship. I haven't looked at
I think it's them first, then Ohio State second, but give or take those two. I mean, there's a gap. As Ryan in the chat's talking about, Urasek's a stud. He is a stud. If you watch Stanford football over the past couple of years, he's been a stud there. Let's continue to talk about that because they return Carson Beck. Let's talk about this offense. So you add in those pieces that we just said: Etienne, Rashad of quarterback depth, wide receiver depth, huge with Humphreys, Young, Michael Jackson coming into the portal, and then Urasek at the tight end spot. But they also returned Carson Beck at the quarterback spot, who you just alluded to. Heisman odds through the roof right now. Fran Tarkenton 2.0, Patty C says. But look, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions a year ago. The wide receiver room with Dominic Lovett and Thomas coming back, as well as Dylan Bell loading up. They got the tight ends look very good. Oscar Delp had 24 receptions a year ago. You mix him with Urasek, and the tight end room is looking really good. There's no real weakness. And then you look at the offensive line. They returned 4 or 5 starters from a year ago, Patty C. They're only breaking in, the center Jared Wilson.
That's dangerous.
left tackle Ernest Green, the third back, right tackle Xavier Truss back, the guards Dylan Fairchild, Tate Ratledge, all back. Whew. I mean, where's the weakness on this offense to me? Is it running the ball? And if so, with Etienne and the offensive line being stronger this year, I kind of expect them to be better at running the ball.
Etienne was a good back at Florida. Obviously, he's got the name from his brother, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like when you're running behind that line and you have that defense to work with, you're in an advantageous position most of the time. And then you have a quarterback like Beck to keep the defensive backfield and the linebackers honest. They're going to be fine. They're going to dominate. It's just a matter of when they face a tough schedule, which, like you mentioned before, they have this year. It's a tougher schedule than they've probably ever faced, or at least in recent history that I can remember. Are they going to be able to navigate it? I'm sure they will be. I'm sure they're going to be in the playoff. But this program has established national championship or bust expectations, and there are some other tough teams out there. So we'll see.
Yeah. Another guy I want to key in on that I know they're excited about is the running back Roderick Robinson II out of California. This is a guy that I think they're he only had 2 touchdowns and like 200 yards a year ago, but he's someone to watch in that backfield as well. The offense I think will be better in year 2 of Mike Bobo, and providing everyone stays healthy. Like, to me, the only way this offense was, let's say they didn't hit those numbers from a year ago, that means to me Carson Beck must have got injured or something. That's what I think.
Well, let me ask you this. Carson Beck's lack of mobility is the only aspect of this offense that could potentially be a problem, because if they do face some tough defenses, if a defense is able to take away the pass and yet take away the run and just force Carson Beck to use his legs to pick up the yardage and get the first downs, I don't know. That's a tough task for any defense to do. And it's not like Carson Beck is some amateur quarterback that isn't able to. I think he's decently athletic too, but that if I had to point out a weakness aside from the running back, this is kind of it. He's not that mobile. Yeah.
That and the run game, I guess, and that like I'm nitpicking here. The offense will be fine. Yeah. Defensively, well, first off, I should hit on what they lost. They did lose a bunch of guys in the portal on the offense. Brock Vandergrift goes to Kentucky, so he'll get a chance. I believe they're on the schedule, week 3, I believe. They lost running back Andrew Paul to Rich Rodriguez in Jacksonville State. Wide receiver Tyler Williams to Minnesota. Wide receiver Zeed Haynes to Syracuse. CJ Smith to Purdue. And same with Denylon Morissette to Purdue. And then wide receiver Jackson Meeks to Syracuse. Wide receiver Makai Muse to Houston. Alu Ba, an offensive lineman to Syracuse. Offensive lineman Joshua Miller to Syracuse. Offensive lineman Chad Lindbergh to Rice. And offensive lineman Austin Blask to UNC. How about Syracuse?
6 wide receivers hit the portal.
How about all those, like, Syracuse just loaded up? I know Fran Brown's
you knew Fran Brown
there.
was yeah.
Purdue got a couple too, so watch out. Georgia 2.0 is up there in upstate New York.
God forbid they lose a coordinator. They lose a position coach and half of their staff, jump ship. But
the biggest one is Vandergrift, though, right? The biggest one is Vandergrift.
I guess from a depth standpoint, yes. But I feel like, I don't know. I mean, you can't. No team in all of college football has ever been able to just have a foolproof room of quarterbacks. And Vandergrift was what, the number 2, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Bama did for like a year when they had Hurts and Tua, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Texas Tech when they had Baker Mayfield and Mahomes and.
But still, you lose your number 2, and then you don't have that number 2.
Yeah, depth is always an issue, but they get Rashada, so maybe he's better than Vandergrift. Who knows?
They're in a good spot, Georgia.
They are in a great spot. Defensively, Kirby Smart's forte, 5th in the nation in scoring per game, giving up only 15.6 points per game. That's top in the SEC. 9th in the NCAA against the run. 9th in total yards, 289.1 yards per game. That's second best in the SEC. Ninth in pass defense. They only give up 175.4 yards per game. That's top in the SEC. 20th in the nation against the run, 113.6 yards per game. Fourth in the SEC. And let me ask you about this, because I think if you're going to sit there and nitpick, that's the one you circle. That's the one you circle. You say, hey, can they be bet the rush defense? 20th in the nation. Okay, it's still good. But if you look back to the years that won the national championship, they were a lot better against the run. So maybe that's the angle. Like I said, if you're going to nitpick, they only returned 6 starters on the defense from a year ago. So there's that. But what do you think?
What did they lose in the draft? They lost a second, two second round defensive backs, and a third round defensive back in Kamari Lassiter, Javon Bullard, and Tyke Smith, and then a defensive tackle in the 6th round. I don't know. This team is going to lose when you're the number one, essentially, or top 3 talented team in the country. You're going to lose 7 to 8 players in the draft every single year. I think they're going to be fine. They have been recruiting at an extraordinary level. 4 5 stars coming in to this draft class. Let me see.
Unbelievable. They're just loaded with 4 and 5 stars on this roster. But
Ellis Robinson was the number 2 player in the nation. He's the number 1 cornerback in the nation. They just brought him in. I wonder if he's going to be ready to start. But then also Justin Williams.
Well, I don't get.
Sorry, Lou Holtz just saying, unbelievable.
KJ Bolden at safety is 5-star, and Chris Sims, another linebacker at 5-star. So that's 4 defensive 5-stars they brought in. This team is rolling. I don't know what they're your national champions this year, right?
I think them or Ohio State. Ohio State did a lot in the portal, but I'll say this: Ohio State has a bigger question mark at the quarterback spot than Georgia does.
Yeah.
So I would lean Georgia, but Ohio State I think also has an easier schedule than Georgia. So
that's true. A much easier schedule.
Yeah. So there's that, but let's jump into it because the defensive additions in the transfer portal, they got Jake Pope, a safety they're excited about, coming over from Alabama. They also got Xavier McLeod from South Carolina, who was very good there. After that, special teams additions, long snapper Bo Gardner from UCLA and kicker Charlie Ham, who's not even projected to be their starter, just kicking depth coming in there. But
when
they
you got
did
kicking
lose.
depth, you're golden.
Yeah, I mean they lost their other kicker, Jared Zirkle, to Texas A&M and Mykel, so they had to fill that void. But the defense.
Let's talk about this real quick. Georgia has been in a position to be this team that they are now for a long time, right? When you talk about the 3 most talented football states in the country, California, Texas, and Florida, all of those have significant competition for their talent, right? I mean, I guess USC has kind of rights to most of California. All the other schools, Stanford, Berkeley, UCLA, are kind of second fiddle. So USC should be higher than they are. They've been shit in the bed. But Florida has 3 different teams, Florida State, Miami, and Florida that all have equal.
You could even say UCF getting in there a little bit. Yeah,
I would say they're second to those other 3 based on history, but they all 3 of those, and yes, ECU, and then all the other close by states going into Florida,
not ECU, UCF,
yeah, UCF,
ECU.
sorry,
yeah.
Taking their talent. Florida has been rated, and then Texas has 8 FBS schools in the state, and not to mention Oklahoma and the other schools like Arkansas, LSU, that are taking their talent. Georgia is kind of sitting there under the radar. And then Georgia Tech has academic requirements that prohibit them from being able to get super high-end talent. So Georgia is sitting there in the best position pretty much to get talent. And here they are getting it every year. They get, I feel like, a pretty substantial portion of their talent in state, and then they can go to the nearby states and get the rest.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, yeah, and I mean maybe Ohio State would be the one, or LSU that you bring up.
Yeah, both of those. Yeah.
They lost some guys in the portal. Marvin Jones Jr. Remember, his dad was a longtime New York Jet. He headed off to Florida State, where his father, I think graduated from. And then Darius Smith, a defensive end, goes to Missouri. Whew. CJ Madden also heads out to Purdue. The Boilermakers coming in and stealing some top end talent. That's the third guy they've got from the Bulldogs roster. Defensive lineman Jonathan Jefferson heads out to SMU. And then enjoy their blood money. Linebacker Jamon Dumas Johnson heads out to Kentucky as well. EJ Lightsey going to Georgia Tech. Ridiculous. Linebacker Xavier Sorley heads out to Arkansas. Nyland Green back to Purdue. What the hell's going on at Purdue? They're just loading up on guys. AJ Harris heads out to Penn State. Patrick Taylor's in the portal. And those are a lot of losses, but once again, they left because they weren't seeing the field, I think, for the most part. And it'll be interesting to see, how they do, and does that affect the Georgia Bulldogs depth? Let me ask you this, Petty C, as I know I'm going to break down the rest of this defense, or maybe let me break down the defense first. They return on the defensive line, Mykel Williams, who had 4.5 sacks a year ago. Nazir Stackhouse, stud defensive tackle. That is very good. The linebacking room, I think one of the better with Munden and Chambliss. So looking great there. The secondary I would circle is probably maybe the biggest question mark with what they lost to the NFL draft. Dalen Everett coming back, who just had a pick a year ago, but did start. Same with free safety Malachi Starks, who was the 4th leading tackler on the team.
Well, like we mentioned, 3 defensive back draft picks in the first 3 rounds. That's tough to recover from. Any team is going to have to, when you are producing great talent like that, it's not necessarily easy to replicate that.
Yeah, the kicker and punter back. Let me just so I think the defense will be fine. Secondary, that's the biggest thing you circle. What could that be an area of weakness? But it was the run.
How many
defense
teams are they playing
problem.
that throw the ball around that
Everybody in the SEC now, I would say.
Yeah.
Like the SEC is this. On our Alabama preview, I talked about this. They've kind of turned into the old Big 12 to me in that regard. Not from obviously they're better than the Big 12, but
they're not quite there.
Well, Josh Heupel in Tennessee throws the ball all fucking around.
Yeah.
Brian Kelly and LSU throw it all around. Now you're adding Kalen DeBauer to the mix, throws the ball all around. Sarkisian always threw the ball all around. You got Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State. Now I guess that's what I'm saying. And Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, and then you add in Venables, who's a defensive coach, but they have Seth Luttrell as the OC.
You better be able to defend the pass.
Yeah, it's a shit ton of passing teams. So yeah, I do think it's kind of turned into a high scoring offense or conference. But let me ask you this though, before we talk about the schedule here, because you said that you think they will win a national championship, and that might be fair.
Well, but here's the thing: is they're most likely the SEC champion, which means they'll probably get the first. I don't know how it's going to work, but during the New Year's 6 era, the higher seeds typically got their choice of the bowl games, and so since the Peach Bowl is one of the quarterfinal games this year, you figure they're going to essentially host the first game of the quarterfinals that they're going to play in, which will be in Atlanta. Right. And then what? They have to go to Miami. That's not a long trip for the second. And then the finals is in Atlanta again. They have home field advantage throughout the playoffs almost.
Yeah, that is fair to say. And that's something that could play a big role in this season. Look, I want to ask you a couple questions regarding last season before we talk about the schedule for this year. But before I do that, I want to tell you that the college football experience is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. The NBA playoffs are in. Our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, wants to make it a lot more interesting. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. They have, when college football rolls around, I love playing Underdog Fantasy college football. Playing their pickup games is as simple as selecting higher or lower on player stats like points, rebounds, assists, and so much more. And you can make entries of all NBA players if you wanted to, or you can mix and match across your favorite sports. The UFL is going on right now, that spring football league. If you want to load up Adrian Martinez of the Birmingham Stallions and mix him with a MLB player and an NBA player, you can do that. That's what's really cool about this is a lot of other places would never give you that opportunity, and you can win up to 100 times the amount of money you enter. When you jump into it, it's a ton of fun, folks. Underdogs available in 30 different states, including California and Texas and Canada. And look, if you're in Florida and you're worried about this because they got rid of props, don't worry. Underdog just launched their champions, their player versus player format for the state of Florida. So check it out. Sign up today with the promo code TCESGPN to claim your special pick plus first time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com promo code TCESGPN. Now, Patty C, let me ask you this. I know you talked about, and I want to go through the schedule for this year. We're going to go game by game, but I'm one that I actually think you could push back and say, maybe Georgia, because if you look at Georgia the year before in 2022,
yeah,
they almost blew out everybody. I think Missouri was the only team that kept it close.
That was the 15-0 Georgia team.
Yes. Now you look at last year, and the thing that stands out to me is the 10-point game at home in Athens against South Carolina, 7-point game at Auburn, right? 9-point game against Missouri when Missouri had the lead late in Athens. 8-point win against Georgia Tech. Now I think that they
absolutely were not the same team in 2023 that they were in 2022.
Well, that's what I'm saying, and that's what you wonder. And I don't know if that's the run defense. I don't know what, but they just weren't as good. Which means, maybe they could be susceptible for a loss in the playoffs. If we think they're definitely going to be in the playoffs, or in this new schedule where you don't play the SEC East, or you play some of the SEC East, but it's different now. Let's talk.
Well, I will say that is they don't have an apparent edge, over a lot of the teams that would otherwise be considered contenders. What quarterback? What? Carson Beck's a serviceable quarterback. He's quarterbacking a great team. You know who Carson Beck reminds me of a little bit? Who's the Miami quarterback back in like 2001?
Ken Dorsey?
Dorsey. He kind of reminds me of Dorsey. He's a little bit better, but you're surrounded by super talent, and yes, you're following up a team that has been national championship level. All you got to do is step in and throw the ball around a little bit, and you're going to do fine. That's kind of what he reminds me of. He's probably better than that. Yeah,
I think he's a little better, but yeah, that's fair. All right, well, let's take a look. Well, first off, the win total is 10.5 wins. All right, so Vegas thinks, and this is a -110 both ways, right? So that I'm seeing today, as of today, this could change, obviously, but so Vegas kind of thinks, it's going to be right between either 10-2 or 11-1, right? And plus 190 to make the SEC championship, plus 320 to win the national championship. So they're the highest odds to win the national championship. To make the 12-team playoff, this is something new. They're minus 550 to make the 12-team playoff, which is pretty remarkable. And to not make the playoff, plus 370. So look, if you're a Bama fan, I think that plus 370 to not make it is very juicy. But let's talk about this.
Don't have it for some reason this year. If there's something
wrong, the schedule's harder. There's no denying that the schedule's harder.
Agreed, 100%.
And let's go to it, because week 1, this is at the Mercedes-Benz, that shitty stadium there. Why can't they do a home and home? They had to play the other one in Charlotte at Jerry Richardson Stadium. No. They couldn't just play Clemson at Clemson.
This
and
is
then
better than Death Valley and Sanford Stadium.
Ridiculous. Yeah. But the Clemson Tigers, they don't use the portal. Dabo says he gets transfers from high school. Because my whole team's full of transfers from high school.
I love Dabo.
Cade Klubnik.
Dabo is a cartoon character at this point.
Is there any way that you think Clemson, which by the way, the year Georgia won the national champ, one of the years Georgia won the national championship, I feel like Clemson gave them their toughest test of the whole season. I think they lose 10-3 on a pick 6.
I do think Clemson will give them a harder challenge than probably most people expect. I think Clemson's a good team, and I think in year 2, Klubnik is going to be in absolute control of that offense.
Garrett Riley, Lincoln's brother, in year 2, they will understand the offense better. I do believe that.
That's the other thing, is like both the coordinator and the quarterback are in year 2 of that offense. And that means that thing is going to be a lot smoother.
They're not winning this. I'm taking Georgia.
They're not winning it, but I expect a close game. I do.
Yeah. Well, week 2, GBO Farms, as Tennessee Tech Golden Eagles come into play. That game's ridiculous. Then week 3. Now here we go. Okay, he's never lost. He's 8-0. against Kentucky. Last season was 51-13. But I know NC Nick brought this up on our draft episode. Yeah, if you haven't listened to our week by week look at the college football for the entire 2024 season, go check it out. The last time they played in 2022, when they kind of rolled almost everybody, the only two teams that gave them a test really were Missouri, where they won by 4 at Missouri, and Kentucky, where it was a 16-6 game. Kentucky goes out, gets Brock Vandagriff. There's something there. There's some, he wants to prove Kirby Smart wrong. Any chance that Stoops and the Wildcats get the Bulldogs in Lexington in week 3?
Very low. What is Kentucky Stadium? I'm guessing in the 50,000 seat range.
Yes, Commonwealth Stadium. They try to call it Kroger. It's not. It's Commonwealth. Damn it! But
as lit as it might get, it is never going to be something that is an intimidating environment for Georgia. I think Georgia walks in there. They handle their business. Even if Kentucky does a respectable job, Georgia's coming out with a W.
Yeah, then they get a bye week after Kentucky, and that's something like they only have 4 true road games and no back-to-back away games. And even at that, 2 of them the week after they get a bye.
Yeah, I mean, coming off the bye and then going to Alabama is super, super fortuitous.
Well, how about the other one with Texas and Florida too? Like, so, I mean, but we'll get there. At Alabama, after the bye week, this one is the one. I think, Kalen DeBauer against Kirby Smart, offensive coach against defensive coach. Going to be fascinating to watch this because DeBauer, certainly, cutting edge, I would say, as far as talk about a guy that just plays a lot different. Almost the only one I'd compare to in the SEC would be Leach.
Yeah, I would say that we haven't seen a coach with this advanced of a system that also has this advanced of talent in any time in my memory. I mean, you could say Leach in his time at Oklahoma was close, but I don't think they were getting like top 2 or 3 talent at that point. Like this Alabama is going to be the most talented team in the country. Them and Georgia are pretty much tied for that position. And then to be that high fly of an offense, it's going to be interesting to see how Georgia handles that.
I think Georgia has this one circled. They lost the SEC championship, which, ruined their season.
They might have it circled, but that doesn't mean they're going to fucking do anything about it. They've been getting their ass kicked by Alabama, and this one is in Tuscaloosa.
Fair, but Nick Saban is not walking through that door.
That's true. That's true.
But I'm going to favor Georgia to win this game.
Very slightly. I'm not super confident. I want to see what Kalen DeBoer has up his sleeve in the first 5 weeks of the season.
He's crazy. And what I mean by the Leach comparison, not only like do they, heavy like air raid philosophies, but Leach against LSU went for like a 4th and 1 at his own 22-yard line.
Yeah.
Well, you think that's crazy. I think he got it in that LSU game, but DeBauer did that all the time last year in the Washington State game, which they would have lost to Washington State. They almost lost to Washington State. He goes for a 4th and 4 at his own 30 in the 4th quarter, right? In a 1-score game, right? And against Oregon, he did that a bunch. So,
well, if he can turn Milroe into if he can coach him into high percentage throws so that this dude is confident in his throwing ability, and obviously all you got to do with him is get him on the edge, and he's a super threat to run the ball. You get both of those elements working, and he's shown, I feel like if you give him an open target down the field, he can hit it. Alabama could be a very real threat. I think Georgia better not take this game lightly.
So you got him 4-0? I got him 4-0.
I got him 4-0, but I mean, it's creeping up on a loss between that Clemson and road trip to Alabama. I got him 4-0.
Well, week 6, right after they head to Tuscaloosa, they come back home and they take on Hugh Strip Club Freeze and the Auburn Tigers. Now, Auburn gave them a little bit of a game on the Plains last year, but now it's Sanford Stadium. Nah, not buying it.
Yeah, fair. What was it 27-20 last year?
Yeah, I got them 5-0.
Yep.
And then Jeff Lebby and Mississippi State come into town. I got them 6-0.
Yeah.
Then
here's the loss. At this point in the season,
I agree. They
will have a loss whether it is this game or one of the previous games, they will
Here's
take a
the
loss.
only thing tricky about this. This is a genius schedule. I don't know what type of C notes they slipped Greg Sankey, but they get Texas the week after the Red River Shootout. So if Texas wins the Red River Shootout, it is a great spot to catch them partying all week.
There's a little chance that he could get this one too.
But I favor Texas. I favor Texas by like a field goal. So that would be their first loss of
the year. These are two very similar teams in terms of their makeup. They both have that pro style approach to both offense and defense, and a team with a gimmick might be able to catch them, like AKA Oklahoma last year against Texas. But generally speaking, they're going to have the answer for almost any team they play.
Yeah. And then they got the bye week on October 26th. And we're going to talk coming out of that bye week, but as of right now, we both have them at 6-1 heading into their second bye week. Remember, every team gets 2 bye weeks this year. But before we do that, folks, I want to tell you that the college football experience Georgia Bulldogs season preview is brought to you by Rhythm. Look, if you're betting on NBA player props, then you should be downloading Rhythm. That's RITHMM. Rhythm gives you a menu of best player props for every single NBA playoff game, making it easy to go through and find the best props to put your money on in a matter of seconds. Rhythm's predictions are backed by over 3 years of data and a team of data scientists and quants that focus on fine-tuning their algorithm to give you the best shot at winning. Rhythm pairs its predictions with player prop graphs to help you feel even more confident in your picks, which you can make wherever you normally place your bets or DFS picks. From superstars to bench players, Rhythm finds the best player props, all backed by AI data, without you needing to endlessly scroll through a sports book. So what are you doing, folks? Hop on over there, start a free 7-day trial, and start winning with your NBA player props with Rhythm, available wherever you get your apps. All right, we are back. We both got the Georgia Bulldogs 6-1 heading into the cocktail party. They get the bye week before and like I said, the schedule is, it's challenging, but I would also say like it's been protected in my opinion.
Florida also off of a bye.
Yes.
I don't know how much.
Will Billy Napier even be coaching? I think he might be fired by this point. Kirby Smart possibility. He's 6-2 against Florida. And he's got it rolling against Florida. I think. Yeah. I don't think Napier's going to be coaching this game. Probably
they'll slap Florida. Yes. And then these next 2 games are the only chance that they have to lose another game on the schedule. Do you think they lose either one of these?
The Ole Miss one's interesting. So he's 1-1 all time against Ole Miss, and his one loss was at Ole Miss. Now, granted, that was his first 2 years that he was there, but it is different going in there than hosting Ole Miss. That is the one that, to me, obviously the win total breaks down to Ole Miss going all in, bringing in a lot of guys in the portal.
Is Oxford that tough of a place to go into? I mean, some good teams have taken losses there.
LSU lost there last year.
Alabama lost there when they were number 1 in the country. Yeah.
I'll tell you this: it's way more trickier than historically we'd see Georgia play at South Carolina or something this week. So I do think Ole Miss is a little slippier than that.
I think Ole Miss is still a candy ass team.
Yeah.
There's an element of Georgia that is candy ass from their times when they couldn't get it done, but they've become more Alabama than Ole Miss. I think they dominate Ole Miss even on the road.
I agree. And then they're home to Tennessee. Can Josh Heupel get his first win against Kirby Smart? I don't think so. Yeah, I got the Bulldogs grabbing that. And then wouldn't be SEC football. People always they thought that the only expansion teams that they added were Texas and Oklahoma. You forgot. I guess this was added a few years back when UMass Minutemen, who play so many SEC games each and every year. And by the way, if you're wondering what that number is on the right, I ranked, to me, the hardest games of the season 1 to 12. So if you're wondering what that is, but the UMass Minutemen and Don Brown come in. Ridiculous game. They should be ashamed of this game on the fucking schedule. I mean, to have Tennessee Tech and UMass, you essentially have 2 FCS games.
Tennessee Tech, UMass, and even Georgia Tech is like.
Well, at least Georgia Tech made a bowl. Brent Key, it's a historical.
They're
game.
getting better. They're getting better.
Like Tennessee Tech, UMass play each other. I think UMass will be like a 1.5 point favorite. You know what I mean? Like, And then they end the season at home in Athens against Brent Key and Georgia Tech, who did win, I think, 6-7 games last year. So
11-1, right? Is that what we're thinking here?
The win total set at 10.5. Let's go back to this. 10.5 is the win total. Is it more likely they go 10-2 or 11-1, Patty C?
I got them going 11-1. I think this team is awesome.
I do too. I got them going 11-1,
if not 12-0. But I think that at Texas game, that at Alabama game,
it's a harder schedule than they've had in a long time.
Yeah,
like I would say ever. But that's the 12-team playoff.
new era.
So I think you jump on that because look, even if they lose 2 games, let's say they lose Bama and Texas, they go 10-2. They're still in the playoffs. Yeah. You're still fucked on that. Plus 370 not to make the playoffs. To not make the playoffs, if you're going to buy that future, you would need, I think, Carson Beck to get injured. But let's say you would need Clemson to shock the world in the opener.
Then Bama
and then Bama and Texas. And then even with that, I still think they might get in.
9-3,
you might need a 4th loss.
No.
You think
unless they whooped everyone else's ass, a 3-loss team ain't getting in the playoff.
Well, they could win the SEC though, dude. Because if they lost to Clemson, that's a non-con game.
Yeah.
And if you have 2 losses in the SEC play, I kind of think you're going to.
Yeah. Everyone's going to be chewing each other up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see. 10-3 versus 9-3. Yeah. 10-3 probably gets you in.
Yeah. I don't know. It's going to be fun to watch, but I'm on the over 10.5 wins. I also think the plus 190 on the SEC champ is a decent play. How many weeks could they play in Atlanta in a row?
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Is it 3 weeks in a row they could? The SEC championship's in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Then they would get a bye week.
Or the quarterfinal, they'll play in Atlanta. And then the national championships for 3 out of 4 weeks they'll be in Atlanta. How many weeks prior to that?
This is what I'm talking about, though. This is, you want to do all this shit to fix college football, then fix it all the way.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. No team should have that type of advantage
throughout the playoffs.
You would have purposely don't put them in the game then in Atlanta. You can't do that 3 out of 4.
Don't give them first choice. Yeah, it's bullshit.
KE in the chat says there's no way that Georgia loses more than 2 games this season. I agree. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate on if you're a Georgia Tech fan and you hate Georgia, or you're a Florida fan that hates Georgia. Maybe you got a lot of money. You're drunk at the casino, and you say, you know what, I'm gonna throw some money on that plus 370 to not make the playoffs. Right?
Are we confident that they are at the point where Alabama has been for the past 15 years, where it's just like they don't fuck up?
I was thinking Alabama was kind of trickling down a little bit, and I touched on that on our Bama previews. They've been playing a lot more closer games over the past 3 years than before.
Still, it's pretty rare that they just shit the bed. In fact, it never happens. They might get beaten on the last play of the game by a Tennessee or whoever, but they're not gonna shit the bed. They are still Alabama, and I think Georgia has ascended to that level where you're not just gonna catch a random L if you're Georgia.
So what's the better bet to you? Plus 190 to win the SEC or plus 320 to win the Natty?
That's tough. I'm gonna say the better bet is plus 320 to win the Natty, because I feel like if you're winning the SEC, you're winning the Natty.
And you're getting all those games in Atlanta. I think you're right. I think you take the plus. I think
they're my 2024 national champion, Georgia. I think they get it done.
We'll see. It's them or Ohio State to me. Ohio State, remember, Ohio State, a lot of Ohio State fans think they should have beat them. And that game was in Atlanta. God damn, every game's in Atlanta. Yeah.
They should.
But yeah. So anyway, folks, we're just starting our previews. We dropped the Alabama preview. The Auburn preview is done out there too. So go check out all of those. College Football Experience podcast. We have done this for years. We break down all 134 teams in college football with the solo podcast for each and every year. Only this year it's 134. Last year was 133. Kennesaw State. Hello, Georgia, state of Georgia. We will preview Kennesaw State we give the same amount of attention to Kennesaw State that we will the Georgia Bulldogs. So check us out, the College Football Experience, wherever podcasts can be found. YouTube.com/the College Experience. Hit that like and subscribe button. Also, in a few hours, I will be going live with my Stadium Heads podcast. Myself and Michael Barker, the college football camp, aka college football campus tour. If you don't know about him and his travels, he's been to every single school,
aka
in
the GOAT fan of college football.
We will be talking ACC stadiums on the Stadium Heads podcast. You got to search for that Stadium Heads podcast. Go subscribe to that. We already talked about SEC stadiums, the Sanford Stadium, and why it's such a great stadium. So check out all that stuff. We basically break down why college football is the greatest thing on the fucking planet. Give Patty C a follow on Twitter at PattyC831. Make sure you check out our other stuff we do on the college football experience. We've previewed every coaching hire. We've previewed all the every single week. We're in the middle of previewing the whole year. Week 9 is scheduled for Wednesday as we're going game by game, talking college football, year round on this show, whether it's the recruiting trail, whether it's we got you covered when it comes to college football. Also, check out the college basketball experience and the college baseball experience podcast. We're all under one roof on YouTube, youtube.com/the college experience. And don't forget, I also host the FCS college football experience. We are part of the Sports Gambling Podcast, so check out all their great work and check out the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. And until next time, folks, I'm on the over with the dogs. Patty C saying, go dogs. He's on the over with the dogs. You better start thinking about yours. And we out of here.
Run and shoot. We can really run and shoot. And the whole team's looking and the whole world's looking with the cameras. Run and shoot. We can really run and shoot. And you know what you're getting, 'cause the books we written with the cameras. Everybody's trying to stop this team, but we keep on knocking them dead. They make opposing coaches wanna cuss and scream.